Polar bear, liver. In 1912, two men on an Antarctic expedition ran out of food and made a decision that seemed logical at the time. They ate their sled dogs. They saved the livers for themselves, treating them as a prize. 2 weeks later, one of the men went insane. Then his skin started peeling off in sheets. He died. The survivor, Douglas Mawson, barely made it back. His own skin was shredding, the soles of his feet detaching from his body. The cause wasn't starvation, it was the liver. Polar bear and sled dog livers store vitamin A in concentrations so extreme that a single ounce can overwhelm the human body completely. Your skin peels off like burnt paper. Your skull swells. Arctic explorers and native peoples had known for centuries, never eat the liver. The men who ignored that rule found out why. Boiled leather. The Donner Party. In the winter of 1846, a group of 81 American pioneers got trapped in the Sierra Nevada mountains with no food and no way out. They started with what made sense: horses, mules, the dogs. When those ran out, they boiled the leather from their saddles, belts and shoe soles into a grey sludge and drank it for calories. They boiled harnesses. They chewed wagon parts. Eyewitness accounts describe eating boiled leather and tree bark through the winter months just to feel something in their stomachs. It provided almost no nutrition. It kept them alive just long enough for some of them to face a worse decision. When everything else was gone, some survivors ate the bodies of those who had died. Around 45 of the original 81 made it out. The leather and bark bought them just enough time. And not much more. Sawdust bread. During the Siege of Leningrad, the city was completely cut off by German forces for almost 900 days. The daily bread ration dropped to 125 grams per person, roughly the size of a chocolate bar. To stretch the flour further, Soviet bakers began mixing in sawdust and cellulose. Sometimes filler made up over half the loaf. It was brown, gritty, and barely held together. Survivors also dissolved carpenter's glue in water and drank it as a paste to get some form of calories. People boiled wallpaper, ate cats and rats, and at least in documented cases, ate broken wooden chairs out of desperation. Over 1 million civilians died in Leningrad, mostly from starvation. The ones who survived did so by eating things that were never meant to go near a human mouth. The carpenter's glue is confirmed in memoirs and photographs. People boiled it from wooden furniture and drank it warm. Hákarl, the toxic shark. Greenlandic shark flesh is poisonous when fresh. It contains urea and trimethylamine oxide in such concentration that eating it raw causes severe ammonia poisoning, vomiting, disorientation, and in large quantities, death. Early Icelandic settlers had almost nothing else. No crops, scarce fresh meat. But the waters were full of these sharks, so they figured something out. Gut the shark, bury it in gravel for several weeks, let it ferment underground until the toxins break down, then dig it up and hang the meat to dry for several more months. What comes out smells of urine and rotten cheese so sharp it stings the eyes. Anthony Bourdain called it the single worst thing he had ever put in his mouth. Icelanders still eat it at midwinter festivals. What began as a survival necessity, eat the only thing available or starve, became a national tradition. The fermentation process that makes it edible was discovered out of desperation. Getting it wrong, even slightly, would have killed the person who ate it. Poisonous wild plants. The North Korean famine. In the 1990s, famine swept North Korea, and the government said almost nothing. People in rural areas began foraging for anything they could find. Survivors reported eating a wild grass called nungjangcho, which is actually toxic. Faces swelled up after eating it, stomachs cramped. Some died from it. Others kept eating it because the alternative was starving faster. People mixed pine bark and roots into cornmeal, even though it caused severe diarrhea and stomach pain. Some foraged wild mushrooms and died not knowing they were poisonous. In the worst affected areas, people ate animal fodder, food meant for livestock, just to feel full. The body has no mechanism to distinguish between hunger and poisoning when both feel the same. Famine survivors ate literally anything that grew, regardless of what it did to them afterward. Bitter cassava. Cassava is a root vegetable that feeds hundreds of millions of people across Africa, South America, and Asia. The sweet variety is safe. The bitter variety contains cyanogenic glycosides, compounds that release cyanide inside the human body. Prepared correctly, peeled, soaked, dried, cooked, the toxins break down and it's safe to eat. But in a famine, when people are starving and don't have time for a 2-day preparation process, they skip steps. In 2017 in Uganda, a village feast used improperly processed cassava flour. 98 people developed acute cyanide poisoning. 2 died. In sub-Saharan Africa, thousands of people eating poorly processed cassava over years have developed konzo, a sudden, irreversible paralysis of the arms and legs that never goes away. The root can save your life in a food shortage. It can also paralyze you permanently. The difference is whether you had the time and resources to prepare it properly. People in famines often don't. Pufferfish organs, Japanese POW camps. Fugu, the Japanese pufferfish, is one of the most dangerous foods in the world. Its liver, ovaries, and skin contain tetrodotoxin, a poison with no antidote that shuts down the nervous system and stops the muscles that control breathing. Death comes from suffocation while fully conscious. Trained chefs in Japan study for years specifically to remove the toxic parts without contaminating the flesh. During World War II, prisoners of war in Japanese camps who were given fish scraps sometimes received pufferfish remains, discarded parts that included the organs. Some ate them not knowing what they were. The paralysis is described by survivors as starting in the fingertips and moving inward. There is nothing to do once it starts except wait and hope the dose wasn't fatal. The fish itself is safe. The parts that get thrown away are what kill you. In a prison camp with no food and no information, that distinction was impossible to know in advance. Clay and soil, Haiti and beyond. In Haiti, when food prices collapsed the economy in 2008, people in the poorest areas began making and eating patties made of clay, salt, and vegetable shortening, not as a last resort, as a regular meal. The clay came from the Central Plateau region, dried in the sun, mixed into discs and sold in markets. Children ate them to stop the feeling of hunger. The clay fills the stomach and creates the sensation of being full. It provides no calories and no nutrition. Over time, it causes severe intestinal damage, blocks digestion, and in children causes developmental problems that don't reverse. This practice, called Geophagy, the eating of earth, exists in dozens of countries during famines and extreme poverty. Pregnant women eat soil in parts of sub-Saharan Africa. Starving populations in siege conditions have done it for centuries. The body, when starving, sends signals that clay can temporarily silence. The signals stop. The starvation doesn't. Radiation-contaminated food, Chernobyl's aftermath. After the Chernobyl nuclear disaster in 1986, the Soviet government set exclusion zones and contamination limits for food. What they didn't fully control was what happened in the surrounding regions where people were poor, isolated, and had no other food source. Farmers kept their animals. They ate the milk, the meat, the vegetables from soil that had absorbed radioactive fallout. Some knew it was contaminated. They ate it anyway because the alternative was hunger. In the years following the disaster, thyroid cancers in children in Belarus and Ukraine spiked dramatically, traced directly to contaminated milk containing radioactive iodine. People drank it because it was the only food their families had. The damage didn't show up immediately. It showed up years later in hospitals, in children who had no idea what their parents had been forced to feed them. Eating contaminated food didn't feel like a decision at the time. It felt like breakfast. If you learned something new, hit subscribe. Thanks for watching.